I caught her staring again. It was 3 in the morning. I was reviewing contracts in my home office, and when I glanced up from the screen, there she was in the doorway, eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. This wasn't the professional scan of a bodyguard checking for threats. This was something else entirely. Something that had been building between us for months, unspoken and dangerous. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask, what city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below and subscribe to help this channel grow. Your support means everything to me. My name is Sophia Chen, and 6 months ago I hired Samantha Hart to protect me. I'm the CEO of a venture capital firm in San Francisco, and after my last deal went south with some very angry investors, my board insisted on security. Samantha came highly recommended, ex-military with impeccable credentials. She was supposed to be invisible, professional, just another layer of protection between me and the world. But from the first day, she was impossible to ignore. She had this presence, this quiet confidence that filled every room she entered. Tall, athletic, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she shook my hand that first meeting, her grip was firm and her gaze direct. "I'm here to keep you safe, Miss Chen," she said. "You won't even know I'm around." That turned out to be a lie. I knew exactly where she was, every moment of every day. I felt her presence like a magnetic pull, always 3 steps behind me, always watching. At first I told myself it was just awareness of the security measures. But as weeks turned into months, I had to admit the truth. I wasn't just aware of her. I was hyper-aware of her. The way she moved, the way she stood. The sound of her voice when she answered her phone in the other room. And I caught her staring. A lot. It started small. I'd be in a meeting and glance toward the door where she stood, and her eyes would already be on me. Not scanning the room. Not watching for threats. Just looking at me. When I'd catch her, she'd look away immediately. Professional mask sliding back into place. But it kept happening. During a company dinner, I felt her gaze from across the restaurant and looked up to find her studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When our eyes met, something flickered across her face before she turned her attention elsewhere. My heart was racing for the rest of the meal. In the car one evening after a particularly brutal day of negotiations, I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. When I opened them, I caught her watching me in the rearview mirror. This time she didn't look away fast enough, and for 3 heartbeats we just stared at each other in that reflection. The air felt electric. I started testing it. I'd move through my apartment, doing mundane things like making coffee or watering plants, and I'd catch her eyes following my movements. When I'd ask her a question, she'd sometimes take a second too long to answer, like she'd been lost in thought. Once, I turned around suddenly while reaching for a book on a high shelf, and she was right there, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. She stepped back immediately, apologizing for crowding my space. But the intensity in her gaze lingered. My friends started noticing too. My best friend Maya came over for wine one evening and whispered, "Your bodyguard is staring at you like you're the only person in the world. You know that, right?" I brushed it off, said Maya was imagining things. But that night, alone in my bedroom, I replayed every moment of Samantha's gaze and had to admit Maya might be right. The thing was, I liked it. I liked feeling her attention on me. I liked the way my skin warmed when I knew she was watching. I started dressing more carefully in the mornings, choosing outfits that made me feel confident and attractive. I told myself it was professionalism, that I needed to look sharp for meetings, but I knew I was lying. I was dressing for her. The tension between us grew unbearable. We'd have perfectly normal professional conversations about my schedule or security protocols. But underneath was this current of something unspoken. Sometimes our hands would brush when she handed me something, and the contact felt like electricity. She started finding excuses to be in the same room as me, even when the security setup didn't require it. I started finding excuses to call her in for updates that could have been text. We were circling each other, and I didn't know how much longer I could pretend I didn't notice. That night at 3 in the morning, when I caught her staring from the doorway, something in me snapped. I was exhausted from work, raw from stress, and I couldn't handle the unspoken tension anymore. I pushed my chair back from the desk and stood up, facing her fully. "Samantha," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Why do you stare at me like that? She froze. For a moment I thought she might deny it, retreat behind professionalism and pretend not to know what I meant. But then her shoulders dropped slightly, and she stepped into the room. Her eyes never left mine. Because, she started, then stopped. Took a breath. Started again. Because you're the most captivating person I've ever met, and I'm not supposed to feel this way about you. But I can't help it. The world seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of my desk to steady myself. What way? I asked, even though I knew. I needed to hear her say it. She moved closer, each step deliberate. Like I want to know every thought in your head. Like I memorize the way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're concentrating. Like I'd do anything to make you smile, because when you smile at me, it's the best part of my day. She stopped a few feet away. I stare at you because I'm falling in love with you, Sophia, and I don't know how to stop. My breath caught. For 6 months we'd been dancing around this, pretending professional boundaries meant something when every glance between us shattered them. Hearing her finally say it out loud felt like permission to acknowledge what I'd been feeling too. What if I don't want you to stop? I whispered. Her eyes widened. Sophia ... double quotes. I notice you too, I said, finding courage in her confession. I notice everything about you. The way you drink your coffee black, even though you add cream when you think I'm not looking. How you tap your fingers against your thigh when you're thinking. That you hum under your breath when you're checking security feeds. I notice when you're tired, when you're worried, when something I say makes you almost smile. I took a step toward her, closing the distance between us. And I notice when you stare at me like I matter more than just being your job. Like I'm someone you actually see. I do see you, she said softly. I see how brilliant you are in negotiations. How you remember details about everyone's lives, asking your assistant about her daughter's soccer game. How you carry the weight of every decision but never complain. How you're kind even when people don't deserve it. She paused. I see all of you, and I'm in awe. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that. In my world, people saw the CEO, the deal maker, the woman who made millions move with a signature. But Samantha saw me. The person underneath all the titles and success. This is complicated, I said, even as my heart raced toward her. I know. You work for me. There are ethical concerns, power dynamics, professional boundaries. I know, she repeated. I've thought about all of it. I've tried to talk myself out of this feeling every single day. But Sophia, when I'm with you, none of that matters as much as the fact that you're you, and I want to know you. Really know you. Not as my client. As a person I care about. I studied her face, seeing vulnerability there that she usually kept hidden. Samantha was always controlled, always composed. But right now, standing in my home office at 3 a.m. confessing her feelings, she looked open and uncertain and beautiful. What happens now? I asked. That's up to you. She held my gaze. I'll respect whatever you decide. If you want me to request a transfer, find you a different bodyguard, I will. If you want to pretend this conversation never happened and keep things professional, I'll do my best. But if you want to explore this, figure out what it means, I'm willing to try. Carefully. Honestly. I thought about the risk. My reputation, her career, the complications that would arise if anyone found out. I thought about my board's reaction, the gossip it would generate, the professional fallout. Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. But my heart, the part of me that lit up every time she walked into a room, that felt safe and seen in her presence, that part was louder. I want to try, I said. Her smile was like sunrise, slow and warm and transforming her entire face. Yeah, I smiled back. I don't know how this works or what we're doing, but I know I don't want to keep pretending I don't feel something for you. She reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, her hand cupped my cheek, thumb brushing softly against my skin. Can I kiss you? She asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She leaned in carefully, like I was something precious. When her lips met mine, it was gentle and questioning and perfect. I melted into her, hands gripping her shoulders, and kissed her back with all the feelings I'd been suppressing for months. She made a small sound of surprise that turned into pleasure, and her arms came around me, pulling me closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that for so long. Me too, I admitted. Every time you'd stand close, or hand me something, or look at me like I mattered, I wanted to close the distance and kiss you. You always mattered, she murmured. From the very first day, we stood there, wrapped in each other, and I felt something shift fundamentally in my world. This wasn't just attraction or a crush, this felt significant. Like the beginning of something that could change everything. Eventually, we moved to the couch, sitting close but not quite touching, both of us processing what had just happened. Samantha took my hand, threading our fingers together, and the simple intimacy of it made my chest ache. We should set some ground rules, she said. Keep you safe both physically and professionally. Agreed. I squeezed her hand. When you're working, you're working. Security comes first. No distractions. And we keep this private for now. Until we figure out what this is and how to handle it publicly. What about your company? Don't you have to disclose this? She nodded. I'll report it to my supervisor tomorrow. They might require me to step back from your detail, assign someone else. The thought of losing your daily presence made me panic. What if I don't want someone else? Then we figure out another solution. Maybe I transition to an oversight role instead of direct protection. Or maybe you switch to a different security firm entirely where I can work with you without the same ethical conflicts. She brought our joined hands to her lips, kissing my knuckles. We'll find a way. I promise. We talked for hours that night, about logistics and feelings and all the complicated pieces of starting something together. She told me about growing up in Colorado, about choosing military service young, about the reasons she went into private security. I told her about the loneliness of success, about building a company but losing connections with people who actually knew me. By the time the sun started rising, we'd mapped out a tentative plan. She'd disclose our relationship to her company and request a role change. I'd be transparent with my board about hiring different security so there were no conflicts of interest. We'd date privately while we figured out if this was sustainable long term. It wouldn't be easy. But looking at her in the early morning light, holding my hand like I was someone worth fighting for, I knew it would be worth it. The next weeks were chaotic. Samantha's company was surprisingly understanding, allowing her to transition to a consultant role on my security while a colleague took over day-to-day protection. My board raised eyebrows but accepted my decision to switch firms. We navigated the changes carefully, maintaining professionalism in public while stealing private moments together. Our first official date was at a quiet restaurant an hour outside the city where neither of us would be recognized. She picked me up in her personal car, not the company SUV, and opened my door like we were normal people doing normal things. Over dinner, she made me laugh telling stories about her military days. I relaxed in ways I never did at business dinners. At the end of the night, she walked me to my door and kissed me goodnight with a tenderness that made me weak. I'm so glad you asked why I was staring, she murmured. Best impulse decision I ever made. We fell into a rhythm. She'd consult on my security during the day, professional and focused. But in the evening, she'd come to my apartment as Samantha, my girlfriend, and we'd cook dinner together or watch movies or just talk for hours. She met my friends, who unanimously approved. I met her sister, who hugged me and said, "Thank God, she's been a mess over you for months." 3 months in, she asked me to be her +1 at a friend's wedding. It was the first time we'd be publicly together as a couple at a social event. I wore a burgundy dress. She wore a suit that made my mouth go dry, and we danced together under string lights while her friends smiled knowingly. When she held me close during a slow song, I whispered, "Is this real? Are we really doing this?" "We're really doing this," she confirmed. And I've never been more sure of anything. I believed her. Because when I looked at her, I saw the same certainty reflected back. This thing between us, born from stolen glances and unspoken feelings, had become something solid and true. 6 months after that night in my home office, we moved in together. She still consulted on my security. But now she also made me breakfast and left notes in my briefcase and held me when work stress overwhelmed me. We built a life together that balanced professional boundaries with personal intimacy. My board eventually found out about our relationship, of course. There were questions and concerns, but by then, the security arrangement was clearly working, and I was thriving both professionally and personally. They accepted it, though a few members grumbled about optics. Samantha and I didn't care. We'd found something rare and precious, and we protected it fiercely. Looking back now, I'm amazed at how different my life became because I asked one question. Why do you stare at me like that? Those 8 words opened a door I didn't know I was walking toward. They gave Samantha permission to confess feelings she'd been hiding. They gave me permission to admit my own feelings in return. People ask sometimes how we knew it was right, taking such a professional risk. I tell them it was the way she looked at me. Not like an asset to protect or a client to manage, but like a person she wanted to know deeply. That kind of seeing, that kind of attention, is rare. When you find it, you don't let professional complications stop you from reaching for it. Samantha still stares at me. But now, when I catch her, I smile and she smiles back, and there's no need to look away or pretend. Now her stares are accompanied by morning kisses and whispered confessions and plans for our future. Now when she looks at me like I'm the center of her world, I can look back and let her see that she's the center of mine. We got married last year. Small ceremony with close friends and family. She cried during her vows, talking about how protecting me became loving me, how her job became her life. I cried during mine, talking about how being seen by her taught me what real connection felt like. And yes, during the ceremony, I caught her staring at me with that same intensity from months before. But this time, instead of wondering what it meant, I knew. She was staring because she loved me, because I was hers and she was mine. Because we'd built something beautiful from a simple question asked at 3 in the morning. If you're still watching, thank you for being here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Have you ever asked someone a question that changed your life? I'd love to hear your stories. Because sometimes all it takes is one moment of courage, one question, one honest answer, and everything changes in the best possible way.